on today's Story Beat.
Be honest with yourself and don't take pictures that you're told to take. Don't take pictures of weddings or birthday parties if you don't feel like it. You have to take pictures of things that inspire you. That way it'll look like something special instead of just a nice picture.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My guest today, David Arnoff, began his career shooting photos for the Cramps album, Songs the Lord Taught Us. Since then, he's contributed to dozens of releases by artists, including the Dream Syndicate, X, Ramones, The Gun Club, and Nick Cave, among many others. A collection of David's work, Shot in the Dark, has been published in the US, the UK, and Spain. I've read Shot in the Dark and can tell you it's a stunning visual feast of dozens of photos of some of the most iconic punk rock musicians of the 70s, 80s, and beyond. David's photos are in the collections of the Grammy Museum in LA, the Punk Rock Museum in Las Vegas, and the Museum of Modern Art in New York. He's also had solo exhibits in Berlin, London, Tokyo, The Hague, and Los Angeles, as well as group shows across the US and in Paris. David has never photographed bands he doesn't like, and he proclaims himself to be the oldest angry young man in Chiswick, West London. So for all those reasons and many more, I'm honored to welcome the brilliant, prolific photographer David Arnoff to StoryBeat today. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you for the kind words.
It's my great pleasure. So let's go back a little bit in time to where all this began for you. How old were you when you first noticed photography and where it meant something to you? How old were you?
I guess I was probably still in my teens. I did it a little bit in high school.
A little bit of photography?
Yeah. Yeah, I did one course. Nothing. I just took pictures of my girlfriends and stuff like that.
You got to start somewhere. When did you get your first camera?
A long time I was using my dad's old camera till it literally fell apart. It just bits fell off of it.
And certainly that was in the day and age of actual film. It wasn't digital at all, I assume.
No, this was film. It fell apart when I was watching Free at the Fillmore.
Oh, wow. Okay. And did you have a sense then that you would be continuing to take photos for most of your life?
No, not really. I had a sense a bit later on, and when in the punk days, that I just wanted to see my name in print once. I wanted to see just in a magazine in Cream or Trouser Press or somewhere, just to see there's my name, and that means I'm an actual photographer now.
Mm-hmm. And how many times do you think you have seen your name in print at this point?
A lot, very many times.
What do you think you learned in those first early days of taking pictures? And we'll get to the detail of that in a moment, but what do you think you learned back then that you have continued to use throughout all of your career that's held you in good stead all this time?
Okay, well, I think I learned my own limitations, which are many, because I'm not very technical with things.
Mm-hmm.
And I just learned what was comfortable for me, that Canon was more comfortable than Nikon for some reason. I don't even know why. I don't know. I just like things to look a certain way. It's in my head. And I could tell if would be able to get that effect, or not even an effect, but just to achieve what I want it to look like. I knew that you can't really take good live pictures if the lights are red or blue or too dark. And I want to use a flash as rarely as I can. Things like that, just little bits.
I notice the book is full of black and white images. Were you shooting on black and white film, or did you reduce color film down to black and white?
Oh, it's all black and white. I always shot in black and white. The only time I shot in color was when the Cramps wanted the album cover, and that was really stressful for me because I never shot in color. And I kind of didn't know what I was doing. I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing. So I shot in black and white and color for those sessions.
And you figured it out clearly.
Yeah, or slightly grainily, but clear. Yeah.
I would think grainily can function quite well in that particular world.
I mean, the last thing I had in print was it's not been out yet, but there's a Rhino Deluxe Talking Heads package coming out, and I've got some color pictures in that, which is really unusual for me. Really, the Cramps in that. The picture I wanted to use for the Cramps album cover was a black and white picture, and I wanted to color it by hand. They used to use these old Marshall oils, these oil paints that you just take a Q-tip and rub the paint onto the picture.
Right.
And that's what I had in mind. But
Are you still shooting on film or have you moved to digital?
now I'm doing stuff digital now. It's just cheaper.
Well, it's a lot cheaper and you can shoot a lot more, right?
Yeah, you don't have to worry. I mean, I was worried. It was really expensive.
Sure.
And I would be worried about actually running out of film and then having the band come on and do something amazing at the end of the gig or something. So
And now that you're shooting in digital, I assume that you're setting the camera in its color settings and then going into a computer or something like that and stripping the color out and making it black and white.
yeah, kind of. Not that I'm shit. Most of what I'm doing photographically now is just personal stuff. I think there's a couple digital shots in the book in the English edition that I just made it black and white.
What is it about photography from day one that spoke to you, spoke to your heart, that still speaks to you today?
It's visuals more than photography. It's like graphic art and old comic books and film noir, that kind of look. I just like film noir, and I like the way bands used to look. It's just the way things look, and it's something I thought I could do. You know, I think I could look at a band and think they would look good if they did this or that, or turn their heads this way or that way, whatever. That I thought what I know what their good side is. I was kind of amazed looking at old pictures of like great looking bands like the Kinks and the Beatles and the Yardbirds, and there's so many pictures of them that are just really dumb. They're pulling faces and just looking silly. And they used to get people that were not into the music to take pictures of the bands. They would just get some house photographer for a magazine that, you know, he's taking pictures of models or cars or sporting events and say, all right, here's this band, you know, take pictures of these guys. And they weren't into it. And they had pictures that come out looking silly a lot of the time.
What then do you think makes a great image great?
I don't know. I think it's in the eye of the beholder, really. I mean,
Well, certainly all of art is, isn't it? But I guess my question is when you're taking pictures, you must be looking for something, or are you just shooting?
yeah, no, I am looking for something. And if I think I've got what was in my head and the light is right and the composition's right and the subject looks like I wanted them to look. I mean, I don't know if I would think it was great, but I would think it'd be right.
I noticed that a certain number of the photos in the book, they're not super crisp and sharp. There's a little bit of an edge to them. They're maybe a little bit out of focus or maybe a little bit on the move so that there's a tight, slight blur to them. My assumption is that really appeals to you.
Yeah, well, I hope they're not that blurry. I think there's one or two.
They're not blurry as in I can't see them. They look beautiful. They're artistic, but they're clearly not posed and they are you're running and gunning, as they say.
They're pretty much not posed, especially the live stuff. There's more movement, so things can be.
That's what I'm talking about, the movement in them.
It's really quick. All the stuff I did off stage was really fast.
Well, I would assume if you're working at a concert, you have to move pretty quickly, don't you?
Yeah, well, I usually don't have any room for me to move. I have to get in a sort of a position and stay there all night
Hmm.
and move just to get people to stop jumping up and down on my back and stuff like that.
Are you in the crowd when you're shooting in a concert?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can tell in the pictures, they're right there. I mean, most of the pictures I did live stuff, it's small places. It's really close to the stage at the Whiskey. You know, there's some pictures from like the Santa Monica Civic. It's a bigger venue, but I'm still not more than a few feet away from the stage. I never had any like long lenses than that.
For listeners who may not know, when David refers to the whiskey, you're talking about the Whiskey A Go-Go on the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles, correct?
Right? Yeah.
And the Santa Monica Civic is clearly in Santa Monica, in the same city, basically.
Most of the pictures are from clubs
They're from clubs in LA.
in LA or over here, but small places.
So when you say over here, just so folks know, you live in London, right?
Yeah. Yeah. West.
You grew up in the US though. Am I correct about that?
Yeah. West Cleveland.
In Cleveland.
But that was my childhood. So
We here in Pittsburgh won't hold it against you.
that's it.
How long have you been living in London?
Since 1984.
1984. So you're practically a Londoner then.
Yeah.
What drew you to London? Why did you go over there and why'd you stay?
I came here once. I always wanted to come here just because of the British invasion, basically. And because at that time I was in LA, which I wasn't comfortable. I was not comfortable at all there. I wasn't a surfer and a beach kid and all that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I just thought all the English stuff looked better. Anyway, I managed to come here in 72 for a little while, 6 months. And I could relate to things more here. I was more comfortable here.
Why? What could you relate to? What made you stay?
I was more comfortable with the weather, believe it or not. I liked it being, cool rather than hot. I just related to the people more. I got on with the people. I didn't have that much of a social life really in LA, and I'm spoiled for choice here. I can't go out my front door without talking to somebody.
Does that then inspire you in your work,
No, it's just more in my life. It just makes me
in your
more.
social life?
Yeah. I should say, talking about London, it's Chiswick.
What did I say? Chiswick, and it's Chiswick.
Chiswick. Yeah.
That's the pronunciation I would not have known. And so how long do you think it was that you were taking pictures as a professional where you're being paid before you thought to yourself, I'm really good at this? Or did that happen before you started to get paid?
When I was getting paid, you would not believe how little I was getting paid. I mean, I had one cover of the New York Rocker magazine, which was like a big deal. That was like, maybe my favorite magazine at the time. And that meant instead of getting the usual $5 for a picture on the inside, I got $10. So this was not a money-making thing, This was, I always had jobs, I had day jobs all the time. But it was like, sorry, what was the question? When did I feel comfortable with it? Or
When did you think that you were good at it? Did you think about that? Did you think you were good right from the very beginning, or did it take a while?
as soon as I saw something in print, I thought, yeah, this is good. I was happy with the pictures I was taking, whether somebody published them or not.
So who in the world of publishing or museums or whatever did you then admire? Were there photographers that you went, yeah, that's my bag, and that's something that I want to try and be like?
I like, Ouija.
Yes,
That was my photographic hero. I like him.
that's true noir.
Yeah, and some of the photos I'd like, I don't even know who took them because, like on the backs of Beatles albums, it doesn't say who took the picture.
Hmm. Well, there's that famous, I can't remember which album it is. It's the Beatles album with the four heads in black turtlenecks, and it's black and white.
Yeah, that's Meet the Beatles. And I used to know the name of that photographer. The picture I really liked there's a picture of John Lennon on the back of Beatles sticks in America that looks like it's shot between somebody's legs. And I just like that. I like the blurry foreground thing. And I like that picture. And I also like the picture of, I should know the guy's name, but I don't. Michael Cooper, maybe. I'm not sure the guy's name, but the cover of December's Children by the Rolling Stones. I really like that cover. And I kind of ripped it off for a picture of the scientists. I had that in mind when I was doing it.
So when you were starting to put the book together, which is called Shot in the Dark, clearly that comes from the fact that you both shoot in dark settings where there's limited lighting, and you also shoot pictures that are themselves dark in some way. I assume that's where the title came from, yeah?
And there's also the third, more kind of literal of not knowing what I'm doing.
Do you still think you don't know what you're doing?
I do know my limitations, and there are many.
If you know your limitations and you play to your strengths, that's really what it's all about. It is for me.
Yeah. Well, I'm not that into punk music anymore, but at one point I thought this is like three chord photography. It's just, and it's not prog rock. It's no synthesizers, that kind of photography.
Well, it's guitars and drums is what it is, and a lot of screaming in the singing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you must have had to go through, I'm going to guess, thousands of pictures to decide what to put into the book.
When somebody approached me, Long Gone John at Sympathy for the Record Industry, the record label,
Hmm.
and he said, we should do a book. And I thought, okay. And then I started looking through my stuff, and I really thought I did not have enough for a book. I thought this is going to be a pamphlet.
Really?
Yeah, I thought can I come up with 50 pages? I wasn't that confident in a way, but he put me in touch with I was having a hard time laying it out. I didn't know where to begin. And he put me in touch with somebody in Chicago that pretty much moved to Chicago right around the time I moved to London. So he was an English guy. And we really hit it off. I only spoke to him over the phone, but he's a great designer. We just laid it out page by page. It took us a year and a half every day on the phone for hours, moving pictures up and down. I wanted them to flow. I wanted it to be it does flow. I want people to look at it from the beginning to the end.
It does flow.
Thanks.
Were you attempting to tell a story?
No, not a story, but I like segues. So I want things to not be jarring.
It's challenging to do segues with photos when you're not telling a story.
Yeah, but there are things that flow for a reason. This picture after that picture because all the way through it. It's not this, here's a bunch of pictures of one band and here's a bunch of pictures by another band. It's how they look on the page opposite each other and what you see when you turn the page.
So you're thinking graphically at the same time as who's in these pictures.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted it to start with Patti Smith and end with Stiv.
And you did that.
Yeah,
It's the pictures of Patti Smith, they're just spectacular.
thanks. Thank you.
Did you work with her? Did you know her?
No, I met her. I met her once before I took those pictures, really briefly. I said hello to her, lift. That was it, you know. And then I met her in more like 20 years ago.
So how many times did you take pictures at concerts where you were just in the audience? You weren't invited in, you didn't have a special pass or anything like that. Did that happen?
Just about every time.
Every time.
I worked in a record warehouse in LA in the sales office, and I could get on the guest list for anything because the record company people wanted you to promote stuff. And they're going, yeah, come to the whiskey and see whoever, and we'll give you an open drinks tab and all this stuff. And that was my in, to just go via that. Sometimes I could get a pass from somebody, but usually you didn't need a pass. Places like the Whiskey and the Starwood, you just bring your camera.
Well, that then leads me to wonder if you were not being hired or brought in specifically, or you had no pass, did you need to obtain rights to put these pictures into a book?
No, it's my stuff. It's my
It's your
rights.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have to get their permission. The thing is, I would have if I needed to. I would take pictures like stuff that's not in the book, like Tom Petty. I saw him at the whiskey and took some pictures and got really, really drunk and took some pictures in the dressing room. Now that I think about it, and the manager gave me a card, and then I went around their apartment the next day, and they said, yeah, it's great. We don't have a lot of live pictures and stuff, and that's how it worked. Usually, I'd talk to somebody, I'd take the pictures, and maybe talk to somebody in the dressing room.
How would you get into a dressing room? Did they just let you in?
I was pretty regular at the Starwood. It's kind of who you know. It's either the bouncer recognizes you, or somebody in the band just gives you a nod, or the manager. The thing is, if you're not acting like an idiotic teenager, you know, just acting like a rabid fan, and you act kind of reasonable, you go back there.
So when you went to shoot a particular band, one band or another, Would you then have a preparation in mind before you went to the club or the arena or wherever you went? Would you prepare as to what you were going to try to find, or did you always find it in the moment?
So you mean live pictures? You're
Live
saying,
pictures,
yeah.
yes, certainly.
The live stuff. The only thing I would have in mind is maybe if I'd never seen the band before and I saw pictures of them, in the NME or something, I kind of saw what a little bit of what they're like. I'd seen pictures of the bands before, so I would plan where to stand, like maybe which side of the stage or
Well, that's
something.
what I mean. You would know which side of the stage you were on. Would you know what the lighting would be like in advance?
No, you never know the lightings. I know I did learn do's and don'ts, and one is don't stand right in front of somebody because you just have a microphone right in front of his face, the mic stand. So you need to be a bit to the side of whoever you're taking pictures of.
You have to have a bit of an angle.
Yeah, and wait for if you can make eye contact, that's good. And I don't know, wait for certain moments.
How many pictures would you shoot at a concert that never made it anywhere, that they were discarded?
Yeah, most of them.
Most of them.
Most of them, yeah. If I shot a roll of 36 and one of those turned up in a magazine or something, that's a result.
Well, did you then go in thinking of yourself as a visual storyteller, that you're going to take pictures that will tell something about a moment or about a person?
Well, I thought I was going to take pictures of these bands that I like the look of, and hopefully they would like the way they looked in the pictures. I wanted them to like the pictures.
And how frequently did the pictures wind up in their hands so they could actually see them?
Frequently, yeah.
Frequently.
At some point, yeah, yeah, frequently.
And they knew who you were.
No, I would just say, look, I'm freelance. I said I just send this stuff out, and it's been in Trouser Press, and it's been in Sounds, and I would mention some magazines, and they're not paying me, and they just like, yeah, great, free photos, you know.
So I have to, I'm just very curious. I've never been a photographer at a rock concert. So I'm wondering, in this case where it's punk rock, which has the reputation of being a little more lively, you could say, where there's a lot more people that are maybe throwing things or pushing people or whatever it might be. Describe what being in that fray or near that fray is like. Is it crazy?
Well, it can be, yeah. There's times one time where I just gave up was when I went to see the Sex Pistols in what turned out to be their last gig, their final gig.
Wow.
And they just played too big a place and it was too crowded. They played at Winterland. And I got a reasonable place to stand. But then during one of the opening bands, there was that much crap. It wasn't violent, but it was just really, really overcrowded. And I thought, my feet haven't touched the ground the past 10 minutes, and I thought, and the pistols aren't even on yet. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to change film, focus the camera, and it must take me 20 minutes. I decided to give it up. It took me about 20 minutes just to get out of the crowd.
Wow. Have you ever been injured?
No, not injured. I know somebody a friend of a friend, this girl that went to see the Damned at the Starwood. He came out and the whole stage was black and he was just waving around a road flare, a lit road flare.
Ooh.
There's a picture of that in the book. Somehow one of the sparks went down, like her cowboy boot went down into her leg and burnt her ankle. And she said she's never going to go to another gig again.
Wow.
I never got hurt. I got in like little fights with people and I got wet from somebody's drink or something like that, but not.
Well, clearly a lot of the pictures that are in Shot in the Dark are, as we already said, from live events. How frequently have you taken pictures in a studio setting where it's more controlled?
Not often enough for me. I like to be more controlled, but I've never done anything in a studio. I've never used studio lighting.
It's always natural lighting for you.
Yeah, I'd like to do stuff off stage.
When do you think you learned where to be in order for the light to be right? How did that happen for you?
Well, I could kind of tell if it's going to be light enough.
It's innate.
Yeah, yeah, I can just see if there's enough light.
And much more difficult to do when you were shooting on film than today when you can actually look in a viewfinder on a digital camera.
And you can't really play around with it afterwards either.
Do you prefer digital to the old days of film?
It's way easier. I mean, I'm not really doing it now for taking pictures of bands and that. Yeah, it's easier and cheaper.
And without naming names, I'm assuming you have over time worked with any number of difficult or uncooperative subjects, even in a live setting. Did you have any particular techniques for overcoming that challenge?
Well, all the people I've met with have been okay. The only I really did get on with everyone in the photos, except Willie DeVille from Mick DeVille didn't hit it off that well, but I still got some pictures I liked of him at the Roxy in LA.
Hmm.
I took some pictures of Billy Idol once. I don't know why, but I really thought that he's like the stupidest person I've ever met. I thought it was a lasting impression. And I saw him on TV recently on a chat show, and I thought, yeah, he's the same. He's just this dopey guy. But I got on with people, you know.
Is that part of what you think of as your way to approach things, is to be in a way that gets along with people? Is that how you do it?
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to. I mean, I'm not being hypocritical about it or anything. I'm hoping I would like these people when I meet them. And sometimes if I don't take to them, then I don't care. You know, I met David Byrne briefly, and I thought, well, I don't think we've got much in common. You know, so
But he's definitely not stupid.
no, no, he's not stupid. No,
No, he's
uh,
quite the genius, actually. Do you think of your work as art or commerce?
no. Some people say that, but it's visual. I mean, it's not. I don't know what it is. It's not food.
But you sold it to places, and so therefore it is has some kind of commercial value. But do you think of it strictly as a commercial enterprise, or are you trying to be an artist at the same time?
Probably trying to be, without sounding big-headed, be more artistic about it.
Hmm.
I'm precious about this stuff. I do turn down things, as I said, if I don't like the band. You know, somebody said, "Oh, do you want to do Def Leppard or at the Tropicana? Do you want to do pictures tomorrow?" And I said, "No, I don't like them. So, no thanks."
So you were able to pick and choose what you wanted to do because really you weren't working for anyone.
I wasn't paying the rent with it. You know, it was just that I was doing it because I wanted to.
What would you say fulfills you the most about shooting pictures in your day?
Well, there's a combination of stuff. Initially, it's the music is really great. Just having to go into a gig and having a really great time and just seeing a wonderful band like X or The Damned or whoever. And then it gets better after that when you talk to them and hang out with them a bit. And then when you see one of the pictures in print eventually, some of this stuff doesn't happen for a long time. I took one of the first pictures I ever took of a band was Cockney Rebel, Steve Harley, in 1973 at the Whiskey. And I thought those pictures were kind of okay, but I wouldn't have dreamt of sending them to anyone. But in recent years, just a few years ago, when he was touring, he used two or three of those pictures in a tour program. So it's like, whatever that is, 50 years later, he used these pictures.
Did you give them to him for free?
No, no, somebody got a hold of me. I haven't been giving things away for free for a long time.
Well, certainly the work that you do has real world value.
Yeah, no, it's got value. I mean, I guess anyway, what I was saying is that it starts at the gig or with the record that I'm listening to,
Hmm.
and then the culmination is when I see it on, the next album cover, or I see a picture in a magazine, or that I'm happy with.
So, when you were shooting back in the day, did you feel pressure to get certain shots, or did you feel any kind of pressure? And if you did, how would you handle it?
I'm just doing it because I want to, so there's no pressure on me.
No pressure.
I would feel disappointed if, I looked at the proof sheets the next day and they weren't that good or something. I felt pressure, like I said, with the Cramps album cover, because that was color and I did not know what I was doing. So that was pressure. I was really nervous. And I mean, it's kind of a funny story because I went through all the slides and all the negatives, trying to find something that might be okay for the cover. And like I said, I thought maybe I can just hand color something instead. And Lux and Ivy came over to the apartment and they're looking at stuff. And I said, here's the best ones. And they're, looking at stuff. And then at one point, Lux said, "What's that pile of slides over there?" And I said, "Those are they're rejects. They're bad. Don't look at them." but he wanted to look at them, and he picked one of those out of the reject pile, and that's the album cover. The reason I rejected it was I thought he had kind of a silly look on his face. I thought he looked a bit comical, but he really liked it.
So you never know. Taste is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it?
I was glad, they liked it, and but that's what they were like. They would pick the weird, they would find the out of focus ones, and they were great characters.
Well, I think that is a sign of both the times and also the style of music that you were taking pictures mostly about, and that there was a kind of a roughness to it. It wasn't absolutely pristine. None of it was. Not the playing of the instruments, not the writing of the songs. Not, it was all had a little bit of an edge to it.
Right. No, that's it exactly. After we did this cover, or I thought we'd done the cover, and I went to meet with them at the record label. And they had these pictures that this other photographer had done, and somebody showing them to the band or to the label saying, "This is kind of what you want, isn't it? Something like this." And they were really slick, and they looked like a new wave band. They reminded me of pictures of like the Pretenders, who I do like, but they looked really clean. Like these pictures could have been of ABBA or something. But I looked at them, I thought, yeah, those are really professional. They're going to take those, but they didn't. They just said, no, no.
So you mentioned your publisher earlier. What was the experience like for you to work with the publisher? Was it nice and easy, or did you have any kind of issues that you had to get through?
He was pretty good about it. He left it up to me and the designer.
So there aren't a lot of words in the book, so you didn't really need a word editor, did you?
That he didn't think should be in there. And there was another band that he wanted in there that I didn't really like that much.
Mm-hmm.
Had to give a trade-off, you know. But that was it mainly. I mean, we were just saying stuff like, between the three of us, I had all these, pretty good pictures of the dead Kennedys, and we all decided that none of us really liked the dead Kennedys all that much. So they're in the English version.
But you're saying that there were compromises that you made along the way.
Very little, not really a compromise, but he was really happy with things. And it was a really slow, expensive process.
Well, how so?
Well, just that it was printed in China, to wait for things to come over from China on these cargo ships took a lot of time. And communication, sometimes they would send sample pages to the designer, and then he would have to try to communicate with them why the contrast isn't right and stuff.
How long overall did it take to actually get the book totally put together and out?
It's around a year and a half, maybe a bit longer. But that was mainly because of me and Mark being so picky about things. Sometimes he'd wake up in the middle of the night and go, "Oh, no, no, this should be like this." And you'd want to change like one picture, but that meant changing the whole book accordingly. Because if you change one picture, then something else has to go in its place, and that has to be the right thing. And it's only a domino effect.
Well, if you were going to be asked to do another book, if you could, if there's enough material, would you do anything differently now than when you put it together for Shot in the Dark?
Well, I would say I haven't got enough for another book. I've got the three versions are slightly different from each other, so they kind of get better as they go.
What do you mean they get better as they go? What does that mean?
Because I'm picky about stuff, so I would look at things and think I'd find a picture that I'd forgotten about, and I really want to put that in. I'd take something else out. I took out a Talking Heads picture and put in a Judas Priest picture of all things.
And was there then a limit? You were told you could only put X number of pages in the book, so that's why one would come out, another would go in?
We know how many pages there were each time. I worked on the second book, took almost as long, almost a year, and that was because the publisher was just really flaky and slow to move on when me and the designer were ready to move on.
If you were about to start being in the photographic business today, what would you do that would give you a satisfying result today? Anything different?
No, I was just kind of lucky the way things worked out.
Timing.
Yeah, timing. And I mean, all three publishers kind of turned up out of the blue. It was their idea that they wanted to do this. The Spanish one took a long time because it was communications were not that great just because the language barrier. And they really wanted to crop my pictures different. And I have explained quite a few times that no, I want, half of somebody's face in this picture because, and I don't want this other crap in the background because I had to explain a lot more, but they're all right in the end.
So I'm trying to understand. There are three different versions of the book: one in the UK, one in Spain, and one in the US.
Yeah, they've all got that same photo on the front, but they're slightly different.
So a true David Arnoff collector would need to get all three.
You'd have to be a fanatic. You would have to be a little bit nuts. I don't know.
Well, you were in a world for a long time, David. I would submit that was a little bit nuts.
Yeah.
Do you miss it at all?
No, sometimes I look back though, and I think, really, did that really happen? I mean, at one time, I don't know if you do, you know who Jeffrey Lee Pierce is
I don't know that name.
from the Gun Club,
Okay.
the now deceased singer in the Gun Club. And I used to have this little car, a Volvo P1800 in 1965, which is a little sports car you have to squeeze into, and I had a little tiny back seat, like for a child or something. And at one point, I had Jeffrey, who was short and rotund, and in the back seat, and Nick Cave, who's 7 feet tall and just all, elbows and knees kind of folded up in the front. And we had to drive downtown and drive back there. It was just comical. I'm just thinking about to have these people in the car.
It sounds like a circus act.
It made sense at the time. And here's the weird thing. These are people that seem really awkward. Jeffrey could be really awkward. Nick Cave, if you saw him on stage and stuff, you'd think he'd be a real bastard, but he wasn't. He's like a comedian. He's really funny.
He has that very sort of serious demeanor about him.
Yeah, but at the time, he didn't take himself that seriously. I think he does now.
I admire his work. He's very unusual and very potent. His work is potent to me. Is that what you were looking for most of the time when you went out to watch bands? Is something that really touched you somehow?
Some emotional thing, something that wasn't just kind of showbiz. It wasn't just slickness.
Hmm. Well, I have been having an absolutely fascinating conversation for just shy of an hour with David Arnoff, who's taken pictures for a very long time of some of the most iconic rock bands ever. And we're going to wind the show down a little bit right now. And I'm just wondering, David, in all of these incredible experiences that you had, are you able to share with us a story that's either weird, quirky, offbeat, strange, or just plain funny, more than what you've already told us?
I've used up my best bits. One thing I want to say that's not quirky or funny or strange, but I want to dedicate this to the designer I was talking about, Cox, who died just before the second edition came out, because that book.
What was their name again?
Mark Cox, Cox. That book couldn't have done it without him. Literally, it wouldn't happen.
Well, kudos to Mark, and so sorry that he's no longer with us. So then, last question for you today, David. You've shared with us just a pretty significant amount of advice throughout this whole show, but I'm wondering if there's a single solid piece of advice that you like to give to those who are starting out in the business of being a photographer, or maybe someone who's doing it a little bit and trying to get to another level.
I'm probably not the one to speak to about this, but because I've never done it that way. But I think you should really be honest with yourself and don't take pictures that you're told to take. Don't take pictures of weddings or birthday parties if you don't feel like it. You have to take pictures of things that inspire you. That way it'll look like something special instead of just a nice picture.
I think that's extremely wise advice.
Okay. And don't get your hopes up too high.
Okay. It's a tough racket, isn't it?
Yeah. I do have another book pretty much assembled, but it's not a music book. It's about a pet fox that lived in the house with us for its whole life, 5.5 years. Barely went out in the garden, but just stayed in the house. And I've got a book pretty much laid out. Haven't written the text yet. And if any publishers are interested out there in this project, I think it would sell a lot better than my other books.
Well, pay attention, folks. And if you are a fan of very, very fine and interesting photography, especially of the punk rock era, you should check out Shot in the Dark, whether the Spanish, the UK, or the US version that David Arnoff has put together. David, thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Thanks for persevering.
And so we've come to the end of today's Story Beat. If you like this episode, won't you please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great Story Beat episodes to you. Story Beat is available on all major podcast apps and platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and many others. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.